Hey everyone, Frank here, and I'm glad that you're here. Artificial intelligence in education isn't just going to be a small evolution of education, it's going to fundamentally disrupt education, and I think this is a wonderful thing. Now, right now in education, you can't do anything without somebody mentioning AI in education, and I thought, okay, that's interesting, what are the possibilities for it? But I wanted to run some experiments. So in this video, I'm going to talk about 2 experiments that I did using artificial intelligence within the educational areas that I work in, how it really highlighted the way that artificial intelligence is going to be quite disruptive, but beneficial in the way that we teach and learn more effectively in the future. And I was pretty surprised with the results that I got when I ran these experiments, and it's definitely going to change the way that I teach in the future. So I hope that you find them interesting and maybe have your own thoughts. You can comment down below. Let's get a discussion going on. But before I get into the experiments themselves, there was 2 of them that I did, I wanted to take a quick look at how we've used technology in education previous to artificial intelligence. And I'm not going to do a huge overview of this, but there are a couple of quick points that I think are important so that we can understand how AI fits into education. So education, back in the old days, used to really be about exchanging information. We'd have an instructor, a teacher, that would know some information, and they would share that with their students to help their students learn that information, and then generally they would assess their students by testing the ability of the students to retrieve that information. And unfortunately, this still does happen quite a bit in the form of the quizzes or tests that we see, which are really all about just retrieving information that you've learned or read or seen. So the actual action of working with something is something that's called an authentic assessment. And unfortunately, we see a lot of retrieval assessments as opposed to authentic assessments. And information has really become far easier to retrieve than ever before. If you want to go really far back in time, books are actually a good example. There was a time when books were really controlled and owned by wealthy people or people that were elites. You couldn't get a book. Of course, the printing press comes out, we see mass distribution of books, and today's world, we have books all over, and most people can get access to books either directly or through a library, or at least we hope so. Books still need to be distributed a lot more. And then the retrieval process of information even became easier once the internet became a thing. Now, anybody with a computer would be able to go onto the internet, they'd be able to retrieve tons of information, they'd be able to find information quite quickly using search features. Nobody really has any limitations in terms of how much they can search on the internet. And the fact that information has now become freely available means that the role of a teacher needs to change as well. An educator, a teacher, a trainer has to provide meaningful ways to critically think about information that's found and searched and provide assessments that are truly authentic because they will look for critical thinking, they'll look for synthesis. However, within the context of that, artificial intelligence is now on the horizon, and that's really going to bring us to the next level and the next evolution and the disruption of education. Because what artificial intelligence allows us to do is synthesize information. And this means that with artificial intelligence, we can take the results of many searches and synthesize them all together very quickly and wind up with some pretty amazing results. So instead of just information exchange, instead of just search and synthesis, we now have a tool that can do the synthesis for us. And I do believe that this synthesis of information is not just the end of how we're going to interact with information. We're not just going to synthesize it and call it a day, but it speeds up the process of synthesizing information so that we can then take it to the next level. And this means that educators need to adapt with AI handling a lot of the basic synthesis of information. We now have to challenge students in new ways that involve them using their critical thinking abilities, their ability to solve problems, their ability to actually define problems to solve, and their ability to apply that new knowledge in creative ways. So let's get to the experiments that I did, and maybe that'll help us see how AI can be used. For the first experiment, I took a course description and I input it into ChatGPT to find out whether ChatGPT could build an entire course outline using just the description of the course. Now, the description of the course defines what I want to learn, it defines the problem, and I wanted to see whether ChatGPT would be able to create a pathway or a synthesis of the way to move through that problem. So I began with this rather long prompt, and I'll put this prompt down in the description. You can check it out for yourself, but basically it's the two experiments. Experiment 1, I'm going to go in and have it do a course outline for me, and experiment number 2, it would go and look at an assignment and analyze it for me. So I put it, it understands, it's going to ask me, so let's take a look at creating a course outline. So that's experiment number 1, so I'm going to do experiment number 1. And it's going to ask what type of course or subject I would like. And I'm going to say I want to do computer networking. So I want it to go in and create a course description for computer networking. So here's a course description for a typical computer networking course. And looking at this, I was pretty surprised at how accurate it was. Maybe it's a little bit verbose. I could do some editing here, but not too bad. And I would like an outline for this course. So now it takes that course description and you'll see that it's creating an entire outline for that course. It starts with the description again. You can see that it's creating the modules with outcomes and objectives, has suggested activities that we can do. And again, it's not a bad outline. It's something that I would typically see, but you'll notice that I didn't really have to spend a lot of time. In fact, I'm talking to you as it's generating this in order to create this rather comprehensive computer networking course. And as you can see, the outline that was created was incredibly detailed. It covered all of the essential aspects of the course, and it even included some creative ideas for assignments and projects that I hadn't thought about. So this experiment showed me just how powerful AI can be in course planning, in course development, and it really saves a lot of time and effort in those areas. Now, it potentially means that students can do this themselves as well. If they're a motivated student, if they have a lot of problems that they want to learn or solve, that means they can use the AI to do that. So the role of the teacher becomes more of a guide through the material and really defining the problems and guiding them through the material towards real-world scenarios where simple information or synthesis won't do the job, where they have to use those as tools to then solve a problem or make decisions. This experiment made me think that one of the key skill sets of a teacher in the future is going to be able to set up those scenarios. They're highly contextualized scenarios, and then allow students to explore them and rise up to the challenge that the teacher is posing for them. Once I saw the results of this first experiment, I really decided to take a look at some of the different assignments in my own courses and see whether or not those could be modified, the assignments themselves. And that was experiment number 2. Now, just before I go into experiment number 2 before I start looking at assignments and how I could modify those, if you like this video, if it's useful, hit the like button, subscribe if you enjoy videos around how we can use technology to learn, teach, and be more productive. It actually really helps the channel. It makes a huge difference in getting discovered and promoted by YouTube. So I'm very appreciative if you do this, but of course, if the video was useful to you, hit the like button. So the next experiment I did, I decided that if AI can synthesize a whole bunch of information, then what about my own assignments? Are they still valuable assignments? Are they still authentic assessments? I teach business intelligence, really making data using decisions, so I decided to look at one of my assignments. In this assignment that I give out to my students, I ask them to work in teams. And in those teams, they research different functional areas within an organization, such as finance, customer service, supply chain. And then within their teams, they look at some of the standard KPIs or key performance indicators that are used in that functional area. So what are some metrics, what are some KPIs that the finance department would use? What are some KPIs and metrics that supply chain would use? I ask them to go out and define the KPI, provide an example of why that KPI is an important metric for that function within the organization, determine how it's measured, so the actual mechanics of it. Think about how difficult it might be to obtain the data to support and do those calculations. And then finally provide some of the target ranges and values that would be typical for that KPI in business. Now, this has a huge number of benefits. It gets the students thinking about KPIs, thinking about measurement, thinking about the decision-making process, and it really allows them to not only understand some common metrics and KPIs, but also helps them when they need to go and develop custom KPIs in the future. Well, I ran this experiment through ChatGPT, this assignment, and the entire research and synthesis phase took seconds. So I've gotten an experiment. I'm just going to type it into the chat window. I've actually put it in my clipboard so you can see I have this assignment. This is the one where the students are going out and grabbing KPIs. And here we go. We have an entire response from ChatGPT as if they were a student responding and doing exactly what I asked them to do. So for example, here's KPI number 3, customer retention rate, definition of the KPI, why it's important, how it's measured, the formula that's used to measure it, how difficult is it to get the data, and then a typical target. There's even an example case study that we can go through and we can see an example of using it. So you can see that this was generated by ChatGPT and AI very quickly, and that became a very powerful way for me to move on beyond this synthesis phase and talk more about why would we choose one KPI over another. This was something that I would normally have to give my students a larger time frame to do, but it didn't make sense to have them do all this searching and synthesis about KPIs when AI could do so quickly. What they did do, though, was by doing this, it freed up a lot of time so that the students could spend more time around the critical thinking and analysis of these KPIs in the decision-making process. So what I was able to do is go more to an assignment that said, look, we got a problem, what are we going to do about it? As opposed to, let's do all this research so that we can begin tackling the problem. We were able to jump right into it. So this experiment means that I'm going to have to go back and I'm going to have to revisit a lot of different assignments that I've created in the past, but I'm pretty optimistic that by doing so, I'm going to help students learn more productively and have better applicable skills in a faster time frame, because they're not going to have to do a lot of pre-work before they can do some of that critical decision making and that critical thinking. It was very interesting. I thought the experiments were interesting. You let me know what you think down below. Comment down below on what you think about the experiments. Have you done any different educational experiments with AI, ChatGPT, or some other service? Thank you again for watching the video, and we'll see you in the next one.